return to my favorite author, This River Awakens. This is the only novel of him available that's out that I have not read yet. And this is a very unknown novel. It was his first. It was the first novel of him that was published. It was published even before Gardens of the Moon. Although I believe it was written after Gardens of the Moon, from what I have gathered and heard, and if I don't misremember. Now, if you told me I was going to read a book that's more hectic than Heart of Darkness, I said, nah, not this month. I was wrong. Yo, what Erickson does in here, and some of the scenes and vivid images he painted, yo. There was like one scene I was reading just a little bit lost. I was reading before I was going to go to sleep, and I read that scene. I was like, "There's no ways I can sleep after that. That's not going to let me sleep. I have to read something else, a little bit more into something else, just to go that." Yeah, the most disturbing scene I have ever read is in this book. Certainly a couple of trigger warnings if you want to go in here. Yeah. It deals into, like, if not to spoil it, it deals into animal abuse, and but it's also realistic and heart-rending, and yeah, it really deals with, like, also it's a coming of age tale, right? A lot of time we're following these kids, and there's two kids that we are mainly following. It's a boy and a girl coming from very different backgrounds, but especially the girl comes from not a good background, from not a good home. Like, dad's an alcoholic, and things get way darker from there, even into that. And then the boy, a better home but still flawed. His parents are struggling to make a success. He keeps having to move around from job to job because his dad gets a new job, struggling to find a place to sit. And then just how there's this group of boyfriends, not boyfriends, like that sounds right, but boys that are friends. That there's like four of them, and each one's like interesting, and they all kind of have a role in the group. And then the new boy, Owen Brand, I love it. That's a great name, Owen Brand, who's the new boy. How his dynamic is in being in the group, and how that all goes about, and just how vicious teenage kids, and this is like young teenagers, it's like 12, 13, can be to each other. It's crazy. And also then with the girl, it's also telling that story, and it's similar to what the girl in It goes through. It's like she grows up basically too quick because of the bad stuff at home. Now I'm going to more. Erickson, it's so vivid. There's like a magical realism part in here, like that you also find in Steinbeck's Canary Row. And I do feel like Steinbeck's work, along with Stephen King's work, was at least somewhat influential. And there's even like one that I'm pretty sure it's just a blatant nod to Stephen. Like, hey, yeah. There's a name for a character in here that's like the name of a very famous King character, and this character is in some ways very similar to that famous King character. So it's like, yeah, that's definitely a nod to King. And that coming of age, you feel it. It's an amazing book. So many different characters, fascinating tales, beautiful. And even then, and it will go like Erickson will introduce the character in the fourth act, and that just derails the whole story. But it also makes perfect sense, because that is kind of exactly how life and such a character will show up in your life. If you were a kid at that time, such characters does show up and derail your life completely. A wonderful, and it's don't think that's a spoiler. It's just the vibe. This book, I was so unsure of my footing in this book all the time, and there's like really hard, ugly stuff. Like I said the words down, but then just how the people treat each other and stuff, and then at the same time there's beauty. There's some of the most exceptional beauty, and beauty, but also heartache, and the same characters and. They are some of the most amazing things I've read in here. And vivid images, like true magical realism that I don't even want to go into. But also the river and the mink farmer. There's a mink farmer in here that, like, There's a story about dogs. it feels Erickson's books are always hard to explain because it feels like in somehow even just this is kind of the story of a small town and the families in a small town in many ways. Even though Owen Brand and the writing is fascinating here. Owen Brand's chapters is told in first person, but then all the other people, all the other characters when it's written is told in third person. So it's like Owen is the main character here around Richard, and it works perfectly. The switch up works perfectly. It makes complete sense why it did. And also just the adventures you go on as a kid there, like in that. And in a small town, and this was in the 70s, I was not noticing, but I grew up in a small town, in a rural area in the 90s. And like before television stuff became too crazy and we didn't really, when you were with your friends, you didn't spend time on television, especially if you were on farms like us. You went out and went to do some stuff. Even when we were like in the res during school, we would just go explore into the town stuff. And it's so reminding of this. And then you also reminded how mean your supposed friends can be. Erickson is definitely, and this just cemented him as my favorite writer still. When I finished this book, I felt hollow. I felt hollow inside. And I don't say this necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I wouldn't say it was a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I think it was an amazing feeling. And it's and it also part of it's, I will never be able to read this book for the first time ever again. That's it. But I definitely think I'm going to read it again because there's so much in this book. And wonderful. That's the Erickson. Yeah. Pick it up.